It's time to talk about the Crimson Tide, the team in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Yeah, the Crimson Tide and their transfer portal happenings, their retention, their guys they're bringing in, the guys they're losing, all that jazz. Because I've done videos in the past about just a transfer portal tracker for all SEC teams, but I think to get more in depth, it would be beneficial to look at every team in the SEC through just a tighter or smaller lens, so we can truly see every team in the SEC. So, with that being said, we're going to start with Alabama. But before we get started, welcome to Random SEC. This is your number one place for SEC content. I am a growing channel. We are on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything, you name it. We have close to 20,000 followers in total, and we are trying to grow on YouTube. So please subscribe at the Random SEC. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. Look. Oh, crap. All right. Let's go ahead and get into it. Kalen DeBoer. This year for Alabama, they ended the season. What was it? 11-3, I think. Got or 12-3, I think. They got destroyed in the SEC championship game. They made the playoffs. Had a crazy comeback win against the Sooners, and then made it to the Rose Bowl and got decimated by Indiana. Indiana's done that to practically everybody, though. Look, this year, I don't want to say it's a disappointment, but in that 4 or 5 game stretch where Alabama was on a tear, they looked like the best team in the country. From where they were there to where they ended up, I don't think it was the most ideal scenario for Alabama fans. Kalen DeBoer has to improve every year he's going to be at Alabama. Okay. First year, he didn't make the playoffs. It was a little disappointing, but overall, it was a pretty decent first year. This year, he improves. He makes the playoffs, gets a playoff win. But at Alabama next year, you're going to have to improve. You're going to have to at least win one more playoff game, maybe be a higher seed. I don't know what it is, but it's a shorter leash at Alabama than it is at any other place. And let me just say, as far as the transfer portal goes, as far as the guys you signed in the transfer portal, it hasn't been the prettiest, site and the prettiest way to go about it, in my opinion. It's one of the weaker classes in the SEC, guys. They've been ranked around 15 or 16 in the SEC and transfer portal rankings so far. But I'm not going to rule Kalen DeBoer out. Okay, I'm not going to say that Kalen DeBoer is not going to figure this out, because I think he will. He's one of the coaches I trust the most in college football and the SEC especially. And there's still like I don't know, like 5 or 6 days left, maybe 7, I don't know, in the transfer portal to go. So he has a lot of time. And I get that he spent a lot of money on, they had to funnel a lot of money in retaining a lot of these players for next year for Alabama. And that plays a factor in it as well. But it does seem, at least right now, that Alabama may be a little, I don't want to say lacking resources, but just not up there with the teams with elite resources. I'm talking about the Texases. I'm talking about the Texas Techs. I'm talking about even the Michigan and Ohio States. I don't think Alabama's really up there right now. And so it's strange to say, but you're going to have to play the underdog a little bit. You're going to have to figure it out on your own and build a team more similar to how Indiana builds it. And that's going to be a challenge, because at Alabama, you're used to being the top, getting the top athletes to come to you because you're Alabama. But now money's involved. And like I said, I don't want to say that Alabama's lacking in money, because I do think they have a lot of funds. And I don't want to say I'm completely in panic mode about how Alabama has handled the transfer portal so far. Every team does it differently. And I do trust, like I said, Kalen DeBoer. I trust him. And I think that he will get get his get the guys he needs and the guys he wants, and I trust him. Before we go into the actual players that they have and are getting and the players they're retaining, um, let's just keep it a buck. I think or let's talk about some guys that they may have whiffed on. Alabama fans will tell me, "Well, we didn't want this guy, it's better off we don't get him." And some of those I say, "Yeah, you're right." I do think Kalen DeBoer is picking and choosing, but I know Alabama wanted Cam Coleman. I know they did. They just didn't have, I don't know, the funds or whatever you wanna call it, to get Cam Coleman. That's the bottom line, guys. And whether you wanna believe that or not, that's up to you. And there have been other guys like that, that Texas and Texas Tech and other teams are just in better positions to land guys, and it's just so unusual to see. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of it, though. I've said I trust Kalen DeBoer, okay? Can you trust me on that? I do trust Kalen DeBoer, and I think he will get his guys. Scratch that, I know he was good as guys. I know Alabama will be a good team next year, okay? They just will they take the next step? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But let's go ahead and look at some of the players that they are bringing in the portal. Josh Ford, tight end, Oklahoma State, 3 seasons of eligibility remaining. This was a guy. Look, he was pretty sought after over a couple schools, and I'm gonna say this is a good get. I will. I don't know too much about him. I haven't watched too much film on him, but I think he's a good get for Alabama. But what you're gonna be seeing is more kind of kids from, I don't know what you would call smaller programs, but it seems like they're kind of poaching instead of, pushing all their funds and doing bidding wars all over the place. Which, people will say, "Oh, Alabama doesn't have the funding," and I've been a skeptic as well. But in a lot of ways, I think that's kind of the way you have to go these days. You kind of have to get the more experienced, better guys, and it doesn't really matter where they are. Look at Indiana. I'm gonna bring it back to them a lot through every video because right now they're the college football team you want to replicate. They are the cream of the crop. Indiana, not one 5-star from high school. A lot of their players are from James Madison. A lot of their players are from lower level schools, and that's just gonna how it kinda how it's gonna be moving on, I feel. You're gonna have to center your funds to more of a team approach instead of a player with some stars approach. So I think that's the thing that Alabama's maybe trying to go for. I don't know. A lot of these guys, though, we don't know how good they'll be until we see them on the field. Sucks for Alabama fans, but it could turn out to be, the way to go. Let's look, Caleb Woodson, a linebacker, Virginia Tech. Once again, it's an older guy. This is a good get as well. Um, and I mean, all of these guys are gonna be pretty good gets. I don't know too much about them, um, but I don't know if they really have, like, an elite portal pickup yet that a lot of other teams do. We'll kinda go through it here. Caden Strayhorn, offensive lineman, Michigan. He's a younger guy. He probably won't get to play too much. They do need to fix up their offensive line, though. Offensive line and running game was a part of last year that really, really struggled. Was part of the reason they were held back so much at the end of the season. People kind of got the book out on them and said, if you force them to run the ball, they're cooked, and that's just what happened. And they get some defensive lineman, Devin Tompkins from USC. That's a good get. He'll probably be in the starting rotation. Ethan Stengel, long snapper, Syracuse. Yeah, it's a long snapper. If he can get the job done, that should do the job. Kicking was a problem at some points for Alabama, but I think they'll get it under control. And a punter, Adam Watford, punter, North Alabama. Once again, I can't give you too much insight on those kind of guys. Carmelo O'Neal and defensive back Mercer, 2 seasons of eligibility. Like this is a guy Alabama fans were like, well, he looks like a good get. People were eyeing him, but he's from Mercer. This is kind of a guy you kind of have to trust Kalen DeBoer and the defensive staffs and Kane Womack, and you're gonna have to trust their eye, the talent that they're seeing. I do. I mean, I think Carmelo O'Neal, seeing at the people who wanted him, I think he's gonna be pretty good. I think he's gonna turn out good, but he wasn't playing the talent he's going to be playing. So it's always a concern, and it's a little concerning. But look, you got to trust. I mean, that's really only your only option right now is you got to trust Kane Womack and the defensive staff that they are developing and seeing talent right. Jackson Shuttleworth, tight end, Jacksonville State. Once again, another guy you don't know yet. You're gonna have to see for yourself. Um, but as far as Kalen DeBoer goes and picking up offensive guys, especially wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, he's been pretty good at that throughout his career, no matter where he's been. So I tend to trust Kalen DeBoer on that. Let's see. Kedrick Bingley Jones, defensive line, Mississippi State. This is a pretty good get. Mississippi State, they always got good defensive linemen, and if he's going to Alabama, I do trust this get a lot. So they've really restocked on the defensive line a lot. Kicker from Marshall, Tehu Wood, offensive line, Michigan. Young guy again. Noah Rogers, wide receiver, NC State. That's a pretty good get. That's probably your, I don't know, probably the biggest, most eye appealing get. I don't know, but I know Rogers. He's good. I've seen him play. He's good. He will be a weapon for either Austin Mack or Keelan Russell. We don't know who is the starting quarterback for Alabama quite yet. That's another question of concern for Alabama fans. There's a lot of those. Caleb Smith, the last guy, defensive lineman, Washington, 4 seasons of eligibility left, so another young guy. That's it. It's a pretty short list, right, for SEC schools, and I think that's kind of why they're ranked lower in the transfer portal rankings. Once again, transfer portal rankings, you can't really tell that much from them, but I think the lack of players that they've gotten is a little concerning. I would say that. Look, I think your number one question for Alabama fans, who's our starting quarterback, Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, I think they both have a lot of promise. But the fact that neither of them have kind of been like a starter in the SEC, that's a little concerning. Who is the running backs, the offensive line? Who are we going to get for that? Do you really trust these young guys to step up into those positions? I don't know. Once again, there's still a lot of time left in the portal. Do you trust Kalen DeBoer? Do you think he's just kind of waiting for the eggs to hatch and for him to pounce on the guys and have a day like I don't know Notre Dame did? They hit they hadn't got one portal guy all portal season, and then a couple days ago they went on a spree and got like I don't know 8 or 10, and now they're jumping up to top 10 in the portal rankings. So it could be one of those things for Alabama. I don't know. But I do know that you're going to need more than this. Okay, you're going to need more than this if you're going to want to take that next step that I'm saying you need to. And look, you've lost some players that, frankly, I think you kind of want to keep. And I'm looking at Isaiah Horton. Maybe you couldn't spend that much money. Maybe he wasn't worth the money. Whatever, that's fine. But a lot of these people that are leaving are a little concerning. I'm not gonna lie to you, but you're keeping Jeremy Bernard. You're having Ryan Williams. If Ryan Williams, maybe that was just a sophomore slump this year. Maybe he can get back to his former self in the freshman season. That Ryan Williams we know and love, and the quarterbacks can go going. I think the real question right now is the defense and the running game and the O line. And right now, you haven't really replenished too much. You had a running back from an NC State. He got poached by Texas. That's the nature of the portal. And like like I said, the signs don't point to Kalen DeBoer having it all figured out. But like I said, I'm trusting of him. I'm sorry for the lack of like insight. I just don't know as much about Alabama's situation right now because they simply just haven't done much. You know, as a guy who, I try to cover all the SEC, it's hard to keep up with everything. And so yeah, I know what's happening and I do trust Kalen DeBoer. That's really all I'm gonna say about that. So, Hollywood Smothers, that's a guy that really, kind of turned the narrative from Kalen DeBoer is going to figure this out to what the heck is Kalen DeBoer doing for Alabama fans. And look, I still say trust Kalen DeBoer, trust what he's got going on. He's done it at Washington. He's done it everywhere he's been. He's taken steps every year at Alabama, and there's no really reason for you to believe that he won't take another one. But yes, I get the level of concern you've had. Um, some decent retention for Alabama. Um, but like I said, maybe some of the people leaving aren't so bad. Save some money, and you never know. I don't know as much as these coaches, so I don't know. But thanks for watching. That's really all I have to say about that. Alabama, not my most insightful video, but I could tell you that Alabama, Kellen DeBoer, I trust them to figure it out. Just not the most appealing start to portal season, to say the least. But you still have time, and if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm not in panic mode yet. You haven't even played a game. That's really it. Please follow, like, and subscribe to all Random SEC content and socials, but especially here on YouTube. That's about it. See ya.